At a glance, Tharkad would seem an unlikely location for the capital of a wide-reaching interstellar government. With slightly higher than Terran gravity and an equatorial average temperature of just 20 degrees centigrade, visitors would do well to bring their parka and extra thick gloves. Discovered in 2310, most of Tharkad's landmasses see snow for a majority of the year, and though it may not have looked like prime real estate initially, the discovery of vast mineral reserves proved a strong draw for industrial and commercial development. Jobs and economic opportunity drove immigration, and by 3061, there were roughly 7 billion people living on Tharkad. Of course, this was long after Archon Alistair Mardson's decision to make Tharkad the Lyran capital. It proved to be a savvy move to place the political power near the source of so much wealth and industrial might. It was that industrial power of House Steiner which kept the entire venture going through the succession wars and into the clan invasion. Industrial giants like Defiance and Tharhas Industries created the machinery and ammunition which pummeled back the foes of House Steiner and later the Federated Commonwealth. One of the more notable designs to march off those assembly lines is the Bushwacker, which has become a symbol of the Federated Commonwealth's fight against the clans. As we cover this machine in its various forms across the timeline, I'll hopefully reinforce a connection between mechs like these and the larger context of history. The Bushwacker wouldn't exist if not for a long chain of decisions and incidents which helped make this 55-ton battlemech one of the more interesting in the pantheon of big stumpy boys. Let's jump into the fray and see if we can't find out why we love the Bushwacker. She rode into the rocking motion, determined to pay back the damage with interest. An emerald beam speared out from her torso-mounted large laser, catching the stealth in the left flank and carving away half of its armored protection. Unable to achieve a solid lock for her autocannon, Amanda twisted toward the far side of the wide intersection and cut loose with a stream of hard-biting 80mm slugs as the stealth throttled back into a run. The heavy-caliber tripwire caught McCarthy's stealth at the left ankle, chewing away more of his protection before the mech disappeared behind the corner of a new building. Walking the fire after him, she chewed deep into the building before letting up on the trigger. Flashpoint, page 50, by Lauren L. Coleman. Though it's best known as a clan invasion-era battlemech, the Bushwacker program actually began years before as part of an effort to design a sleek battlemech that could present as small a front-on target as possible for the enemy. With a long, narrow upper torso, the Bushwacker was to be radically different from any existing Tharhas Industries design, like the Crusader or the Wolfhound. In order to accomplish this feat, the previous lessons about how to cram in all the bells and whistles into the battlemech had to be relearned. The mech's 275XL engine was bulkier than the traditional design, which further tested the design team's 31st century Tetris skills. Adding in the 6 tons of gyro and cockpit, 11 double heat sinks, along with hundreds of meters of fiber optic lines and electronics relays and amplifiers proved to be quite the challenge. The earliest prototypes were plagued with gremlins and systemic issues which caused delays and multiple workarounds and redesigns. Eventually, it was determined that the shielding around the extra-light reactor was insufficient to prevent interference with the Bushwacker's electronics package. The resulting cascading, targeting, and sensor failures were not an issue that could be overlooked. Strengthening the shielding around the reactor pushed the mech's weight up too much, and workarounds proved insufficient. In fact, when the Bushwacker X-1 prototype was shipped to the Comguard's 10th Army 282nd Division, in time to participate in the trials against the clans on Tukayyid, reports from the field reflected the glitchy nature of the mech's electronics. Frustrated with what was increasingly seen as an unsolvable problem, the Bushwacker appeared destined for cancellation. An orange blossom of explosions seemed to engulf the mechs, but Archer managed to keep his target lock on the Gladiator as it swayed under the beating. One of the Arcturian guards, a squat bushwhacker, poised itself almost directly in front of the Gladiator, firing with everything it had. Archer slowed to a walking pace, letting his lasers recycle their power charge and cool enough to fire again. He carefully centered his targeting reticule on the humanoid head of the Gladiator as it belched its fire down at the bushwhacker in front of it, nearly toppling the smaller guard mech in a single burst of laser fire. Operation Audacity, page 76 and 77 by Blaine Lee Pardoe. It's sometimes said that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Rude also, but sincere, I suppose. When a raid on a clan Jade Falcon base on Twycross yielded a plethora of data and intelligence on the clan's war machines, Lyran leadership was eager to take up full advantage. When the Tharhas Bushwhacker team received the specifications for the Mad Dog, the light bulbs turned on and they got back to work. You see, to me, when a Mad Dog and a failing Defhest 55-ton mech project really love each other, a solid medium battle mech is delivered 9 months later. More seriously, the narrow profile of the Mad Dog offered key insights which helped the Bushwhacker team leap past the issues which had plagued the mech for years. With those major hurdles in the rear view, production could begin. Built from an Earthworks BSW standard structure wrapped around a Hermes 275 extra light fusion engine, the Bushwhacker's top speed was a blazing fast 86 km per hour. There's never a dull moment in life when you're traveling at 42 miles per hour. Go ahead and write that down. A considerable amount of time and effort was put into placement of the 9 tons of Callan Unity Weave ferrofibrous armor to maintain that sleek, narrow profile of the battle mech. The remaining 25.5 tons of the mech's mass, roughly 46%, could be devoted to weapons, ammunition, and equipment. The Bushwhacker X1 that marched off the Tharcad assembly lines in 3053 was intended to be primarily a long-range skirmisher. The center torso-mounted Blazefire Sweet Shot ER large laser was the primary damage dealer, but it wasn't alone. 2 Federated 5-shot long-range missile systems were installed, one into the left arm and the other into the left torso. Both systems fed from a single ton of ammunition in the left torso protected by case. If the Bushwhacker's Mechwarrior wished to get just a little bit closer, the right arm-mounted Mydron Model B AC-10 autocannon could leave its mark. However, its use needed to be conservative as the mech only carried a single ton of right torso-mounted ammunition. At close range, a pair of machine guns split between the side torsos added their modestly terrifying damage, and both fed from a half-ton of ammunition stored in the right torso. While some discounted the machine guns as being a waste of mass and space, I'd argue that there's a powerful yet hard to quantify value to the feeling you get when you fire one into a trench, or pillbox, or squishy insides of an enemy battle mech. The 11 double heat sinks were more than capable at keeping the Bushwhacker running cool. Firing everything while on the run wasn't enough to push it into the red. A stickler might even suggest that 11th double heat sink could have been used to give the AC-10 one more ton of ammunition. But we take what we can get and don't throw a fit. The lighter machine came down atop a large building behind and to Amanda's right, lasers stabbing sapphire beams into her arm and leg. Twisting back as far as the Bushwhacker could reach, the sergeant just managed to bring her left arm LRM launcher into play. If McCarthy thought all she had were thunders, he was in for a surprise. Amanda had modified her Bushwhacker, yanking out the machine guns in favor of 2 extra tons of ammunition stored in the left torso magazine. Her flight stung at the stealth, giving back at least some insult for the injury she had taken. Flashpoint, page 48, by Lauren L. Coleman. Most of the Bushwhackers produced were quickly shipped out to FedCom units along the border with Clan Jade Falcon. In the time since, it has earned a reputation for being tougher than it should be given that XL engine. One could infer that the mech's sleek appearance made landing a solid hit on the Bushwhacker tougher than one might guess. I can easily imagine some Clan Jade Falcon warrior bouncing the 3rd Gauss rifle slug off of a Bushwhacker's sloped armor and just completely melting down over it. On the Bushwhacker's end, mech warriors learned quickly not to get into slugging matches with clan mechs and instead acted as long-range skirmishers, firing and then falling back to harass the Falcons into moving out of position for heavier hitters to take advantage. Lances consisting of 3 bushwhackers and a 4th lighter, faster battle mech were common. The light mech would act as a spotter or bait mech while the bushwhackers hid until they could step out and all fire at a single designated target. While one mech's twin LRM-5s couldn't do much, 6 of them across 3 bushwhackers could wear down a foe at range. Over time, the bushwhacker built a good reputation and the mech ended up distributed across the Federated Commonwealth. By the late clan invasion era, it could be even found across the other house units, even the DCMS. Trying to close the range, Hoke stepped forward even as the bushwhacker danced away. She knew he was trying to increase the distance enough to bring his long-range missiles into play. It was a touchy business. If the bushwhacker moved too far off, he and Hoke would lose each other in the bucketing rain. But he had to know that the Gallowglass's high-tech ERPPC, unlike the bushwhacker's LRMs or older-type PPCs, had no minimum range. She could practically climb right into the cockpit with her enemy and still be able to hit him with her most savage weapon. The Dying Time, page 105 and 106, by Thomas S. Gressman. Often described as a lovable scoundrel, Vultan Ryder stands as one of the more notable bushwhacker mech warriors during the first years following the mech's introduction. Ryder began his career as a mech warrior within the Federated Commonwealth, but quickly discovered he preferred the more exciting and usually more lucrative life of the mercenary. After joining a unit called Monk's Marauders, he kicked around the inner sphere, gaining experience and avoiding local law enforcement when one money-making scheme or another went sideways. Chased by debtors and a bad habit for racking up gambling losses, Ryder attempted to return to regular military service, but that didn't pan out. After the dishonorable discharge, he was kicking around on a planet named Dustball, where he worked as a goon for a local crime boss to pay off gambling debt when he ran into Adam Steiner. After joining the 1st Somerset Strikers, Ryder's family Centurion was upgraded to a Bushwhacker X1, which he used to great effect. While skilled as a mech warrior and apparently a terrible gambler, the bulk of Vultan Ryder's notoriety came from the serialized propaganda Holovid series, which was popular in the Federated Commonwealth following the Comstar clan trial on Tukayyid. Though the series played pretty fast and loose with the facts, it was seen as an important way to boost morale and promoted the idea that clanners were not unbeatable, much to the frustration of Star Colonel Nikolai Malthus, who was portrayed as a comically inept buffoon. In his Circle Vision strip, O'Hanrahan saw the black Madcat burst through the fence behind him 30 meters to his left. He spun to bring the autocannon in the bushwhacker's right arm and the big laser in its snout to bear, then was gratified to see hits spark along the blacked bullet shape, followed by a quick exhalation of smoke as the beam scoured away paint to burn metal underneath. Moving quickly, the cat swiveled its torso and fired back. The bushwhacker's cockpit lit up as laser beams and a PPC bolt crackled harmlessly past, but the shot from the Mad Cat's right-hand PPC struck the missile launcher that made up the whacker's right arm and shattered it. Black Dragon, page 281 and 282, by Victor Milan. Just a year after its introduction, the Bushwhacker received its first official reconfiguration. 3054's Bushwhacker X2 had no structural changes beyond the removal of the 11th double heatsink. It wasn't needed as the ER large laser from the X1 was pulled in favor of 2 medium pulse lasers set into the same center torso location. Additionally, a 3rd LRM-5 was added to the left torso, yet all 3 still fed from a single ton of left torso ammunition. This change to the loadout drastically shifted the likely role of the Bushwhacker from ranged skirmisher to close-range brawler with a fire support element. Unfortunately, with that XL engine and a full ton and a half of armor shy of the possible max, the mech feels ill-suited for it. If Mechfrog were in charge, 2 ER medium lasers could go into the center torso instead, boosting the range and freeing up 2 tons for additional LRM and autocannon ammunition. However, I'm not in charge, so we're going to have to take what we can get. Thankfully, it appears that the Bushwhacker X2 was not a commonly spotted refit. The first substantial upgrade to the mech arrived in 3056 with the arrival of the BSW S2. It was structurally identical to the X1, including the 11th double heatsink and 9 tons of ferrofibrous armor. The upgrades came with the installation of an LB-10X autocannon in the right arm, replacing that old-school AC-10. This freed up a ton of mass, which was immediately invested in a second ton of autocannon ammunition. Yay. If we stopped right there, the S2 would be a clear upgrade from the original, but we're not done yet. Things get complicated with the removal of the twin LRM-5s in favor of 2 short-range missile 4-racks in their place. Similar to the medium pulse laser swap with the X2, this shifts the power balance from long to short. However, an effort was made to compensate with the installation of an anti-missile system in the left torso along with its ton of ammunition set in the right torso. Why not the left? Because reasons, that's why. Don't ask so many questions. I'm not the one on trial here. Anyway, overall the Bushwacker S2 is an interesting give and take of logical upgrades and questionable shifts in priority. As much as I want to like the S2 because of that LB-10X upgrade, the SRMs I think really hurt it in a way that not even the anti-missile system can mitigate. If you disagree, please let me know. I'm curious to hear your argument. The Salamander threw a new cloud of missiles into the air, arcing 70 warheads toward Amanda's position. The sergeant kicked her Bushwacker into a run, turning into the spread and running beneath the umbrella so that the majority detonated behind her. The maneuver also brought her in close to the enemy line, however, a move not unnoticed by a nearby gunslinger which acquired a quick lock and shot 2 Gauss slugs in her direction. One slug skipped off a rare column of standing petrified wood, knocking off the top 2 meters and raining brown and gold splinters over the ground. The other caught her square in the chest, punching through the last of her centerline armor to crack the physical shield around her fusion engine. Flashpoint. Page 114 by Lauren L. Coleman. Leaping down the timeline to 3063, the BSW L1 Bushwacker was a significant departure from the original. In fact, almost every aspect of this machine was different from the original X series. The L1 took advantage of endosteel and a brand new Lyran-developed light fusion engine technology at its core. Though the light engine didn't shave off as much mass as the XL, it did reduce the vulnerability in the side torsos of the mech to just 2 criticals instead of 3. Opportunity cost spares no one, remember? The L1's movement speed remained unchanged from earlier models and carried 10 double heatsinks, though the traditional ferrofibrous armor was removed in favor of 11.5 tons of standard plate. The 184 points of protection represented roughly a 14% increase in armor coverage from the X series. So far, we have a tougher and more durable Bushwacker. What's next? The traditional ER large laser in the center torso was retained for the L1, but everything else was sacrificed in order to cram in a massive LB-20X autocannon into the right arm and right torso of the mech. This gigantic autocannon fed from 3 tons of ammunition in the right torso protected by case. While the LB-20X is an intimidating weapon, pairing it with the ER large laser feels a little out of whack. The increased armor coverage on the mech is great and does partially mitigate the threat from the light fusion engine on those side torso criticals. It just rubs me the wrong way for a machine that was originally intended to be a long-range skirmisher. Let's just move on because there are fun times ahead. Another Bushwacker Mechwarrior made a name for herself in November of 3065 when the DCMS 5th Sword of Light and Ryukin Go arrived on the often-traded planet Cassius with intent to dislodge the defending 3rd Crucis Lancers and accompanying planetary militia. Dug into a defensive position around the base of a mountain, the Fedcom defenders sought to hold out for as long as possible. Captain Sarah Blair was thrust into command when her CO was cut down in the first few minutes of the battle. She was able to rally her forces and lead from the cockpit of her Bushwacker as she traded fire with the DCMS attackers. Eventually, initiative was stolen and the Fedcom survivors were able to turn the conflict in their favor. Ultimately, Captain Blair led her forces and repeated strikes on DCMS concentrations and was spotted stomping her Bushwacker into the fray, hammering a Combine CO's Hatamoto Chi with alpha strikes at range. By February of 3066, efforts to claim Cassius for the Dragon had to be abandoned. Things would change for the Bushwacker in 3075 when the BSW SR2 stomped into existence, sporting some new tech. Built along the lines of the original X series, the SR2 had a standard structure, extra light fusion engine, and 9 tons of ferrofibrous armor. It even had that 11th double heatsink back. Adorable. The weapons loadout is similar to the original, with the most notable exception being the swap of the traditional ER large laser in the center torso to a plasma rifle. Though this swap ate up an additional ton of mass for the weapon along with 1 additional ton for ammunition in the left torso, the plasma rifle added 2 additional damage per shot plus its heat-applying effects on heat-synced targets. 1d6 worth of heat for those of you who have not yet been indoctrinated into the Church of Plasma. Aiding the plasma rifle at all ranges was an LB-10X autocannon in the right arm, which was fed by 2 tons of case-protected ammunition in the right torso. At short range, the left arm-mounted short-range missile 4-pack could hit for a reasonable punch with its 1 ton of ammunition. And finally, a left torso anti-missile system offered its additional protection. While it is a little bit of everything build that normally would irk me, the plasma rifle and LB-10X make a powerful 1-2 punch pairing. The SR2 Bushwacker would excel in the mid-range bordering on short, and that is a little bit of a concern with that XL engine and lighter armor coverage. Though the AMS can do its part to help keep the mech up and going. I'm of course biased here toward machines that carry the plasma rifle, but independently of that, I think the Bushwacker SR2 is a solid entry into the variant pantheon. "You okay over there, Mistrelli?" she asked, sidestepping slightly in an attempt to draw off some of the fire. Before he could answer, Tasha saw a Bushwacker appear off to one side of the crab. This one had been equipped with target acquisition gear, allowing it to draw in indirect fire. It had reared its ugly head several times already today. Each time it locked onto one of Tasha's people, arrow missiles rained down death from an unseen artillery source. Caught off guard by the sudden reappearance, she wasn't ready when the Battlehawk fired 2 of its Defiance medium pulse lasers. Call of Duty, page 138, by Blaine Lee Pardoe. The most recently produced Bushwacker variant comes with some historical baggage, as it is the widely available consumer model of a battlemech created in joint effort between Tharhas and Coventry Metalworks. During the Word of Blake kerfuffle, Tharhas, along with many other defense manufacturers, struggled to survive. Tharhas was forced to sell off assets, including design specs and production rights, to generate cash. Coventry used the plans of the Bushwacker in their Gauntlet Omnimech program. The Bushwacker X4 is the standard BattleMech version. Though the lore is a little fuzzy, I'm inferring that Tharhas produces the X4 while Coventry has leaned in with the Gauntlet. Now, the Gauntlet did get its own video a while back, so we're not going to dive too deeply into it. Basically, it's the Omnimech version of the Bushwacker, which was a bit of a vanity propaganda project for the Lyran Commonwealth. It had 21 tons of pod space available, and some other bells and whistles too. It is a markedly different machine on the inside, so if you want to know more, check out the Gauntlet video. I posted a link to it in the video notes. The BSW X4 Bushwacker benefited from Endosteel and XL engine and 10 tons of light ferrofibrous armor. The overall armor protection was 169 points, which is just 8 more than the X1's 9 tons of standard ferrofibrous. The last structural addition was the use of a mask system, which could boost the X4's movement profile to 5-10-0 in short bursts. The Bushwacker's primary weaponry consisted of a right arm-mounted plasma rifle fed by 2 tons of ammunition and the traditional center-torso ER large laser. In a quaint appearance this far down the timeline, 2 standard medium lasers were also added, split between the side torsos. Finally, 2 multi-missile 5 launchers were installed, one into the left arm and one into the left torso. Their 2 tons of ammunition could be found in the left torso, which was protected by Case 2. The Bushwacker X4 is an interesting machine, as there's plenty to like about it, while still having some pretty glaring issues? I don't know if issues is a fair word, but we're going to go with issues. The plasma rifle and ER large laser combo is nice, and the MMLs are a good way to split the baby between short-range and long-range firepower. But that XL engine still feels wrong in a world where light fusion engines are increasingly common. The 2 standard medium lasers are okay, but the temptation to shift to the ER variety would only exacerbate the heat issues that already exist from firing the standards along with the larger weapons. Mask systems are always fun until they stop working and send your mech flying, and there still isn't enough armor on the mech to make running around with that XL engine feel good. I really want to like the X4, but I think it just has one too many of these challenges to justify the expense. Since we have a little time and I'm feeling saucy, I did want to put the Bushwacker X4 to the test. Loading up Megamech, I assembled a Lyran Lance of Bushwackers and a Wolfhound 5, with the intent on taking on 4 clan mechs of equal battle value. The Summoner in its prime configuration, along with Mad Dog in its prime, made up the bulk of the clan force. However, they were aided by a Kit Fox and Viper also in their prime configurations. The Mech Warriors were all 3-4 gunnery, except for the Viper and Mad Dog Mech Warriors, who were 4-4 in order to keep the battle value close. Setting out on the western side of the forested map, the Bushwhackers and Wolfhound stuck together and headed toward a forested section up on the northern end of the map. The Jade Falcon mechs were quick to leap forward, though missed the opportunity to bring any long-range weaponry into play. As expected, the Viper and Kit Fox were the first to reach the fight. However, that first turn saw clan concentrated fire against the Wolfhound, which was the most exposed Lyran unit. Thankfully, everything fired at it missed. The next round was a painful one for one of the Bushwhackers, which weathered the fire from 3 of the clan mechs but lost the fight with gravity, leaving it prone. The Lyran mechs unloaded on the Kit Fox, causing significant armor loss. The Viper also took a couple of hits, which possibly made it think twice about this being a quick fight. After this, things completely fell apart as mechs took easy shots where they could and both sides mixed together. Left largely out of the fray was a lingering Mad Dog, which proved to be too much of a temptation as several of the Lyran mechs bolted in its direction and began to force it down with shots from plasma rifles and MML launchers. The ER Large Laser did not see a lot of use in the fight from any of the Bushwhackers. This affirmed my decision to remove it from my MF refit. As the rounds passed, the Kit Fox was cored out as well as one of the Bushwhackers. The Lyrans were concerned that they were going to be burned down if this dragged on much longer, but then the Mad Dog suffered some pretty devastating hits from the rear, which left it prone and eventually knocked out of the fight. Left in a 3 versus 2 situation, the Falcon Summoner boldly closed on a wounded Bushwhacker, which turned out to be a mistake when the Bushwhacker fired its plasma rifle into the Summoner's head, obliterating the armor coverage and causing 2 sensor critical hits. The Summoner fell prone, not quite out of the fight yet, but not getting up anytime soon. The Viper's Mech Warrior made a valiant effort of fighting off the 2 remaining Bushwhackers and the Wolfhound, even winning favorable initiative rolls the next 2 rounds. However, it was just a matter of time, and it fell to a critical hit caused by a lucky SRM strike. I was pretty stunned by the outcome, as 54.87% of the Lyran battle force remained on the field in comparison to the Falcons being entirely wiped out. After looking back through the turns, beyond the plasma rifle headshot on the Summoner, there weren't a lot of lucky shots that explain away the victory. The Bushwhackers and Wolfhound just held their own and were able to burn down targets faster than the clan mechs could. I had figured it would be much closer with a likely clan victory. Greenbird owned, I guess. Now before we do move on, I want to take a crack at creating my totally unofficial and non-canon Bushwhacker variant. I based it off of the X4, so we'll call it a premium refit with designation BSW XMF. Like the X4, it takes advantage of endosteel, mask, and carries 10 tons of light ferrofibrous armor. However, the XL engine has been upgraded to the clan spec design, and it carries 11 double heatsinks. For weaponry, we're looking at a right arm mounted plasma rifle fed by 2 tons of right torso ammunition. The traditional ER Large Laser was pulled from the center torso and replaced by a snub-nosed PPC. To aid in both long and short range punch, 2 multi-missile 5 racks were installed, one into the left arm and one into the left torso. 2 tons of Case 2 protected ammunition were set into the left torso. Finally, a clan spec ER medium laser was added to the mech's open head critical location for some added oh no panic fire should it be needed. It's a no fuss, no muss build that is useful at all ranges and can pack just enough punch to be a problem while not drawing every enemy in a 5 map radius. It's admittedly not so much a long-range skirmisher so much as a mid-range brawler, but it's nice to have some variety and the MMLs are a good compromise. If you'd like to give it a go, I've included the free PDF record sheet for it and a Dropbox link in the video notes below. So why do we love the Bushwhacker? While obviously not a min-maxed machine or an insanely powerful battle mech, I'd argue that its history combined with the unique tie-ins to the clan invasion give it a charm that's hard to beat. Add in the unique and sleek design and, well, perhaps not the original art, but later iterations, and it's easy to see why people enjoy it. Medium mechs are the workhorses of a battle mech unit, and even with its XL engine, the Bushwhacker can put up the numbers. In-universe, its value isn't in doubt, especially if the stuffy Draconis Combine will swallow their pride and include a Lyran-designed mech in their ranks. Now that's a vote of confidence. I'm curious what you think. Is the Bushwacker a solid pick for a 55-ton skirmisher, or are there better options? Is there a variant that you think is the Bushwacker in its peak form? Let me know in the comments and we'll keep the conversation going. Thanks as always for coming out today. If you thought the video deserves it and want to show your support, the easiest way to do that is to hit the like button, subscribe, and comment on it. Let me know how amazing I am. That'll really annoy the Redditors. If you want to go one step further, direct support through Ko-fi or YouTube channel membership is a great way to help ensure the nonsense keeps flowing. Just a couple of bucks a month makes a big difference. I can't do this without you, and I appreciate it. With that, I'll say thanks again for coming out and for all the great photos shared this week in the Discord. We had a lot of new people who were eager to share their excellent paint jobs, and I'm happy to include them. They do some good work. Take care, and please go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.